Oh. I'm gonna get out of here. Where the fuck am I gonna leave? Oh.
University norms by inviting a SWAT team,
voicing outrage and a feeling of betrayal by their schools for calling the police on them.
We, your students, will never, ever forgive you.
They thought to criminalize our dissent, to drown out our voices with baseless accusations of anti-Semitism. But let it be known, we will not be silenced.
Pulled on me multiple times by law enforcement simply for being a black man in America. And now I see guns being drawn on peaceful protesters at Columbia University. When I was 11 years old, I was a victim of police brutality simply for being black in America. And now I see that brutality for protest.
Outside agitators by politicians nobody remembers the name of today. We were the conscience of this nation when we opposed the Vietnam War and racism back in 1968 and 1969 and 1970. The Vietnam War stopped because the people opposed it, and the people who led that were students. And the students who led that were here at Columbia and at Berkeley and a few other campuses on this fair Turtle Island. Students have been on the right side of history at Columbia and at other universities ever since the 1960s. We today...
Today, I was contacted early by Governor Hochul's chief of staff, Stacy Lynch. She reached out to see if I could assist in getting the students on the line. She was working with getting the university on the line to restart negotiations to really avert calls that they were getting to send in the National Guard. They also wanted to avoid the kind of police raid that happened last night. And so it was literally like an episode of 24. We spent all day yesterday trying to bring something together. As late as 8:30 last night, there was a plan for myself, the governor's chief of staff, Ms. Lynch, and a city government official to enter the campus to speak with the students in Hamilton Hall, or not exactly in the hall, but just outside of it. They were going to be given safe passage to talk to us. A university official then agreed to meet with us after. While I was en route listening over the phone, there were 3 breach commands given by the police, followed by at least 3 stand down commands by a civilian official. Just before we could get to the campus after reaching this agreement, the police, for whatever reason, just could not hold. I'm still not clear. I'm looking to find out who gave the order. But as we were about to enter the campus, it was breached and everything was off. This could have been avoided.
Welcome to the National Newspaper Publishers Association's Let It Be Known. And wow, the out of control situation, not just at Columbia, but Columbia is certainly, what happened there is just mind boggling, as you've seen and heard more and more. This is a disaster for the Biden-Harris administration. It's a disaster for these young students who have, as you heard in that clip, historically have been able to exercise their First Amendment rights. And it's certainly a disaster for Mayor Eric Adams, regardless of the outside agitators that they continue to talk about, what might be. This is a disaster. And yet more and more arrests, cancellations of classes, even exams at colleges across the nation. One of the things that also is going on is that in Palestine, students there along the Gaza Strip have sent big thank yous to the demonstrators here, saying that we're glad, we're pleased, we're happy that you haven't forgotten us. And this, to see students be, to see law enforcement and more precisely, uh, they come in as if they are on a battlefield, out in war, out in a foreign country with these, for the most part, overwhelmingly peaceful demonstrators. Um, it's a shame to see. Now, I know that folks have different takes. About 96 says, just imagine if those protesters would go this hard for DE&I and affirmative action. And that's another way to look at it too. Um, where is the outrage for causes that affect us, right? And but for these protesters and these demonstrators, they closely tie the situation in Gaza to what certainly they closely tie uh, the idea of a free Palestinian state to what's going on, what has been going on here in America. So there's correlation. There is a fight going on, and perhaps sometimes the fight is a bit more vigorous, if you will, when it comes to other um, causes than the black cause. And I say sometimes, but most times. The only time we really saw any progress as far as protesting uh, black lives was after George Floyd's murder, and we know that turned out to be nothing more than a moment and not a movement. And one of the things that Austin's writing in, and he's concerned about that all of this strengthens uh, the other guy's chances of returning to the White House. The same Trump who told Israel to do whatever they want in Gaza. He says, I don't recall this type of violence with the anti-apartheid movement on college campuses. Very, very valid points. Very valid points. And Andrew Connolly said they are not being treated like Black Lives Matter. It does reek of that though, right? For them to use this type of force, it does kind of reek of that. But I get what everybody's saying. I get what they're saying, but uh, with police and private security now at every entrance at Columbia, steel barriers lining the streets. You've seen some students pack up belongings in their cars and left the campus, perhaps returning home because classes are canceled, exams, plans are up in the air, as we said. Everywhere there is gloom and uncertainty about what happens next at Columbia. Students have said that the university's decision to call in police to clear the protests that led to the raid on the occupied Hamilton Hall and more than 100 arrests. I think the last count was like 300, right? 300 arrests. So the college community is shattered. The university president, though, said that it was with great regret that she had ordered the police raid against the students and others he said had infiltrated the protest. She said it will take time to heal. We see what's going on across the country on the other side in UCLA.
campuses, Mayor Eric Adams blamed outside agitators for the chaos and urged student protesters to call it quits.
We cannot and will not allow what should be a peaceful gathering to turn into a violent spectacle that serves no purpose.
Um, I'm seeing Mike V is saying that when the Proud Boys and the Patriot Front, the Oath Keepers, were harassing black folks during the last administration, all those terrorist threats on HBCU campus, you didn't see this response. Again, 100%. 100%. We talk about it a lot, Mike V, on this program. When it comes, we know black and white. Some of the things we'll talk about this morning is a huge difference. And this is why you kind of get a little unnerved. I'm gonna use this as an example because I don't want to sound overly biased on someone because everyone knows how huge of a Rihanna fan I am. But it was a little disturbing that I didn't recall Rihanna taking part in any type of demonstrations when it came to black causes. But she was front and center walking the streets of Manhattan in a protest march for Stop Asian Hate. And so this is why black folks and Latino folks have to realize that sometimes not sometimes, oftentimes we are strictly on our own. David Youngblood says, I'm confident these people will eventually be credited for the change that will inevitably happen as a result of these protests, the change being a Palestinian state. Yeah, you got to figure that before the election, maybe even if they're smart, before the Democratic National Convention, that the Biden administration, and I'm not dumping this on Biden as most people have. I'm just saying that the consequences, this is how, unfortunately, how many view it that this is going to fall on them. And it is. But the fact is, folks believe that he should be stronger in his calls for ceasefire. And not only that, why send the aid? Why send the foreign aid, any foreign aid, if it did not? This is the argument. If it did not, if it was not attached with some sort of concrete ceasefire order, and perhaps that's where they fell short. And we keep hearing whispers and reports with no names next to them, as anonymous sources out of the White House, how angry Biden is with Netanyahu. But I believe that before the election, going back to David Youngblood's point about what these students may accomplish, I believe that before the election, that this administration will be forced to do something extremely drastic that they don't want to do, and that is to totally denounce Netanyahu and to take some sort of action to stop the aggression there, because this situation, yeah, eradicate all terrorist groups, Hamas included, but the idea of Palestine being punished the way they are and not being as they see it, a free state, it has been ridiculous forever. And David is saying Biden should go. And this is what I'm talking about that we may finally see happen. Biden, he says, should go to Israel, uh, Ken- uh, Knesset, I guess, Israeli Knesset, and announce U.S. support for a Palestinian state with the real timeline for achieving it. And that's what I was talking about, that you might see that before the election as this continues, because this is not going away. This is not going away. This is not a again, it's not a necessarily a black cause. So as we said, remember so vividly, folks, during the George Floyd situation, this is a movement, not a moment. And I said, nope, watch, this is a moment, not a movement. This right here, what's going on now, because you have others involved. This is not a black thing. This is a movement. And I think they're going to accomplish that. At least get this president, based on the situation, to do exactly what David is recommending. And yeah, it is about humanity. You're right. So they all the same. Greer says it is about humanity. Bobby Henry is watching. He says we need to ask ourselves, what image, thought patterns, and actions are we portraying that our young people are willing to leave their identities behind to become a part of something else? Mike V says if the Democrats lose in November over this, it will blow up the party for 2028 and could have massive consequences. Look, we've said it constantly, Mike. If the Democrats lose the White House, there is no 2028 election. 96 says Benjamin Netanyahu is behind a lot of evil in his own home country, and he gave millions of dollars to Hamas. He is enjoying this war. And we've heard that a lot. And yeah, and so Bobby Henry, going back to Bobby Henry, we like some more clarity on exactly what does that mean, Bobby, because again, he says we need to ask ourselves what image, thought patterns, and actions are we portraying that our young people are willing to leave their identities behind to become a part of something else. Um, don't want to assume what Bobby's meaning there, so I guess he'll write back and tell us exactly, break it down for us. Um, But this is such a volatile situation politically, as well as, like Greer said, humanity is involved here. You can't you can't continue to justify. You can't justify it all, but they continue to try and justify the slaughter of innocents. You just can't do that. You're talking about children, women, babies. You just can't justify this. And it's how many how many Geneva Convention rules and laws and that they've broken. You have to start looking at that. When will they start looking at that? David Youngblood says Netanyahu built Hamas as a divide and conquer tactic to forever keep Palestinians from having a state of their own. And why does Netanyahu continue to wield such influence, I guess, over American presidents? Why are they seemingly afraid? It's almost like I hate to say it, but it's almost like the Republican Party and Trump. Those guys and women are afraid of Trump. One person. And it seems that every American president that has had to deal with a Netanyahu or his ilk shrieks, shrieks back. Mike V says the Move movement in 1986 in Philly was bombed just like Palestinians, and there was no outcry back then either. And so it feeds into again, Mike V, right? This is, and we've talked about this. I know you have watched and heard us talk about this a lot when it comes to to people like us. I mean, we are. We talked yesterday about the pushback even the president of Portugal got. They said he committed treason basically for A, apologizing for that country's role in the transatlantic slave trade and for suggesting reparations to Africans. We get lost in the sauce easily, and sometimes we jump in there, and people who are a part of our community jump in there and stir the pot the other way, and they willing to jump in and sacrifice themselves for stop Asian hate, stop this or that. But where are the allies? Why aren't you up in arms? Where are the allies for the fact that we still don't have a George Floyd Justice and Policing Act? The fact that we still don't have a lot of they're taking rights. Forget about what we don't have. They're taking away the ones we did have. Uh, we've seen in the last couple of years, DE&I get crushed, affirmative action taken out, black women, um, Fearless Fund can't support black women. Black women are not allowed to support black women according to the courts. They have to include white women. It is pretty amazing. Um, Power 96, I see the U.S. House has recently voted to pass an anti-Semitism awareness bill. It took over 100 years for an anti-lynching bill to pass. And there you go, because the Stop Asian Hate bill passed. And so there you go. This is so I think, Mike, we on the same page, just speaking in different languages, different terms, I should say. The Tulsa Race Massacre, he mentions the first aerial bombing of civilians in U.S. history, and the descendants are aging out and getting nothing. Yep. And yet, when we talk about something like reparations, it always has to be let's hire let's pass a bill to have a study. What's the study for? Enough has been done. Just repair. It's you see the building had burned down and collapsed a long time ago. You either build a new house or you don't. Yesterday, former Baltimore State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby appeared on MSNBC with Joyanne Reed. And we talked about Marilyn Mosby a few days ago. There's a petition to get President Biden to issue a pardon before her upcoming sentencing later this month. And she sat down with Joyanne Reed, and I believe we do have a clip.
Yeah, it's still an incredibly sobering moment, right? I've done absolutely nothing wrong, nothing illegal, nothing criminal.
This was your money. Was there any public money involved in this transaction?
No, absolutely not. This was not, despite how I've been vilified, when the gag order was in place and I was unable to defend myself. It's just not PPP loans. This is not a COVID relief funding. This was the money that I was putting away every 2 weeks in a retirement savings account. And I was advised I could withdraw from this fund. There was, the person that testified, the government witness, got on the stand and said all I needed to do was suffer a $50 adversity.
Right.
And I had more than a $50 adversity as a result of COVID. So I didn't even take the stand once that came out, right? And it's like, obviously, I'm not going to be convicted. I know that this was politically targeted, and it was sobering.
I guess the first most obvious question is,
Yeah, she's facing 40 years. And as we broke it down last week, We're talking about $5,000 of her own money. $5,000. Um, the argument, the perjury conviction was they're claiming that she said it was her money or that her husband gave her the $5,000 when supposedly it went this way. She put $5,000 in an account. Essentially, her husband withdrew it and gave it to her. Somehow that makes it illegal. Somehow that makes her a perjurer. Uh, somehow that amounts to 40 years in prison. And you have, once again, a twice impeached, 4 times indicted, sexually assaulter, the jury found to be a sexually assaulter, guy who was found to have defrauded New York out of $400 million. And so he gets a fine. And they're talking about $5,000 that they didn't like how she transferred this $5,000. And remember the house. This was about buying a house in Florida, property in Florida for $420,000. $420,000. And so they pinpointed this $5,000. That it once again uh, says one of the things it says, among others, is when they're out to get you, they're gonna get you. David Youngblood says we all need to sign a petition demanding Biden pardon her prior to her sentencing. I think they've far exceeded now. They're 3,000. They wanted 3,000 signatures. I don't know why they picked that number, but they far exceeded it, which is a great thing. But when I hear folks, journalists included, say, "Oh, this is a waste of time. Oh, wow, they're trying Trump on stuff like this because he broke the law. That's why they're trying him." But there is no outcry. Going back, Mike V, there's no outcry about this situation. This young lady, prosecutor, who went after cops after what they did to Freddie Gray. And that has never sat well with the powers that be. And we all know what happened to Freddie Gray. She wasn't supposed to go after. That was her job. And she did it. She did it for 8 years. So, when they wanna whine, when folks wanna they've even had them on this program. We've had individuals on this program, "Oh, this trial, meaningless for Trump. They shouldn't do it. It makes it seem like it's politically motivated, blah, blah, blah." Those I don't hear those voices when it comes to Marilyn Mosby. So get your stuff together, folks. Bobby Henry, I guess he's gonna explain. He says incidents impacting blacks didn't witness solidarity from others, resulting in fewer protests at HBCUs addressing black issues. Black students and celebrities were not as vocal about human concerns. 100%, Bobby Henry, is what I'm saying. That is 100%. I'm pretty tired of black celebrities and their lack of uh, awareness of stuff. Pretty tired of them. We talk about them. I talk about them because they're the very ones who um, who are the most egregious in being Uncle Toms and et cetera, et cetera. They got theirs, so they think. Which takes me to this. Which takes me to, and y'all all know this. Y'all, everybody knows this, but I'm going to quote it anyway. So you have two types of Negro, the old type and the new type. Most of you know the old type. When you read about him in history during slavery, he was called Uncle Tom. He was the house Negro. And during slavery, you had two Negroes. You had the house Negro and the field Negro. So now you have a 20th century type of house Negro, a 20th century Uncle Tom. He's just as much as an Uncle Tom today as Uncle Tom was 100, 200 years ago. Only he's a modern Uncle Tom. That Uncle Tom wore a handkerchief around his head. This Uncle Tom wears a top hat. He's sharp. He dresses just like you do. He speaks the same phraseology, the same language. He tries to speak it better than you. So this is the 20th century Negro. Whenever you say you, the personal pronoun in the singular or in the plural, he uses it right along with you. When you say you're in trouble, he says, yes, we're in trouble. Why do I say that? None other than the aforementioned Stephen A. Smith. And it's so refreshing to see former athletes like Matt Barnes and others, Jalen Rose and others, finally come for this walking minstrel show. So we all know what he said about Trump and black folks, which is so egregious. The NBA playoffs are going on, as you well know, as I suffer with the Knicks. Um, Russell Westbrook, who has taken uh, so many hits from the media. He has Russell Westbrook just a few years ago was one of basketball's biggest stars from his time with the Oklahoma City Thunder. I mean, this guy was he was unstoppable. He's fallen into some, he's getting older. Career is winding down. So now he comes off the bench and doesn't complain about it. He does his job. But during the playoffs against the Dallas Mavericks, there was an incident in which he appeared to throw an elbow at another player. And so journalists cover these things. Sportscasters cover these things. Sportscasters at ESPN, we're going to get to specifically ESPN. It is their job to talk about it, and you know what? Talk about it call it how they see it. Stephen A. Smith, the modern day house Negro. Stephen A. Smith goes in. He should be suspended, et cetera, et cetera. But that's fine. As a sports journalist, as a sports commentator, he has every right to that opinion. What he does next, what he does next is unfathomable, unthinkable. And he talks about it on air. He calls the league office, pushing the league to suspend Russell Westbrook. Um, Already, don't y'all see a problem with that? Already, he's crossed the line. See, Stephen A. Smith, and I know we got some clips. Maybe I let Greer play the clips of these other guys uh, talking about it. But Stephen A. Smith has really, a long time ago, I guess, lost his way, to be polite about it. But to call the league and push for this man to be suspended is really just as low as you can go. Again, we said about his other stuff he should be fired. ESPN should be ashamed of itself that its journalists would even admit publicly that he did something like this. But here's the thing with Stephen A. He has guys who he would never say it about LeBron James. He would never call the league office on a LeBron James. There are black athletes. He never goes after white athletes. Never. Name one. Somebody show me a time he went after a white athlete. Name one time. He hated and hates Kyrie Irving. And the bottom line is, that's his MO. If you don't have a relationship with him, he tries to, because he has that ESPN machine behind him. He never did it. You remember a long time ago, he worked for the Philadelphia Daily News or Inquirer. He didn't try to, he had no backbone to try and push anybody around then. But he's got all powerful Disney ESPN behind him. And he's the house Negro. And so he feels like he can do this stuff with impunity. And no, Stephen A. has never called Brett Favre out for that scandal in Mississippi. And yes, as Power 96, he called the boss. Wow, I think she's going to play
Called
that
the
clip.
league office to see why Russell Westbrook was suspended. And that just don't sit right with me. And he's a journalist, he needs information. That shit was just weak to me. So we're going to get to Jalen Rose in a second, because that's another friend of the program. But Jack, Stephen A. Smith of late, what's going on with our guy, man?
One, the reason why my main problem with a lot of people, and especially with Stephen A. when he say stuff like this, Matt, if you was on a corner with 10 brothers in your neighborhood, you wouldn't have said that. You wouldn't have had the balls to say black people relate to Trump. You wouldn't have said that in front of your people, in a room full of your people. You said that on TV because you're comfortable there, and that's the narrative that they want you to pay, because somebody probably told you to say that. Bro, I'm not the most intelligent person, but I told you I'm first team common sense. That's why you say these things on TV. So that's why people look at you funny and don't give you the respect. Everything that me and Matt will say on here, we'll say in any barbershop, on any corner, in front of any setting, in front of anybody, because that's how we truly feel. Nobody's telling us a certain thing. So that was the weakest thing. And on the second thing, Matt, you don't work for the league. What make you think you got the power to call and get somebody suspended? So you opening more doors to thinking now, okay, the times when you don't win on TV and spoke bad about me and other players, you called and put your vote in to get people suspended. Is that what you saying? Like that's crazy that you would openly say that. And hold on, my little brother, I love you to death, but you agree with that, Perk, and you a player. You know better than that. Just imagine if you was playing and he called the league when you got into it with somebody, Serge Ibaka or somebody, and they saying it, and he called and saying, "Well, I think Perk needs to be suspended, taking money out your pocket and your family." That's crazy, dog. That's the weakest thing he could have ever said on TV, Matt.
Weak. Shows he's a weak man. That was Stephen A. Jackson and Matt Barnes. Stephen A. Jackson, Stephen Jackson, and Matt Barnes. Matt Barnes was the lighter skinned gentleman. Both former NBA stars. I love the line that Stephen Jackson said, "I may not be the most intelligent. I am not the most intelligent." He says, "But I am first team common sense." Love that line. And Perk is Kendrick Perkins. And I was surprised too at Kendrick Perkins defending. I'm surprised anybody defending Stephen A. Smith, but especially Perkins. Stephen Jackson alluded to. Jalen Rose also lit Stephen A. up on Twitter as well. I love Jalen Rose anyway, and so that was refreshing. But it's just insane. It is absolutely insane that this guy would do what he did. And as Stephen Jackson said, you want to take food out of his family's mouth because you suspended couple of things. One, you lose uh, if you're suspended a game, it's a day of pay. Spend it a week, it's a week of pay. I know these guys make a lot of money. Um, you suspend it, you lose, your team then goes on to lose in the playoffs. You can't advance to the next round. That's more money lost. But anybody he doesn't like or anybody who refuses to develop be one of his sources, this is what Stephen A. Smith does. Anybody black, let's be more specific about it. And I don't know if in the longer clip they went in on he on Fox News. Why do you think he on Fox News? He goes on Fox News. That's what he does. But this guy
Something, is in the playoffs, star players, someone like Russ who's taken so much bullshit from the media to begin with. He's out there and playing his role on that team. He went from superstar to now he's out there being the whole plugger, the dirty guy, the shit that doesn't always show up on the stat sheet. That's his roles now, and he's adapted to that role. So for him to kind of go over there and do that and make that call, that shit just didn't sit well. And again, I mean, Stephen A is our brother. And Jack, I think that's why this era is so dope, I feel like, in media, because he used to just be able to say that and let the shit ride. And no one could say nothing to him because no one else had platforms. And again, we got a lot of love for Stephen A. Smith. We don't fuck with Whitlock, but I got a lot of love for Stephen A. I fuck with Stephen A. But sometimes he says some shit that's just like, come on, bro. You
well, Matt, I mean, and that's your boy. I come from under the old law. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's people that I grew up with that came out of jail that I know that snitching that I ain't fucking with. He is.
And again, respect there to Stephen Jackson, who even though his partner saying, that's Stephen is his boy or whatever. And kudos for Matt, because if that's your boy and you going in on, that's what friends are for. But Stephen Jackson was like, that's your boy. I'm from the old school. And he is. But Stephen A. Smith is exactly that, Power 96. He's a better dressed Jason Whitlock. Perhaps a better spoken Jason Whitlock. But that's not saying a whole lot. But to do that, it just, folks already have a hard time respecting journalists. Now he's got folks in the game that he could, because believe it, they're not the only ones. Those two, Matt Barnes, Stephen Jackson, Jalen Rose, are not the only retired NBA players and current NBA players who saw this, and perhaps even before this, were not feeling Stephen A. Smith. Like he said, he's a menswear house version of Whitlock. You have. He said, I love. It was Matt who said that didn't sit well with him in his spirit. How could it? How could it? When you have somebody actively doing something like this, and because of the platform. And I love what they said to, and again, I think it was Matt Barnes. It was Matt Barnes who said the good thing is that now you have folks like him who have platforms in which they can hit back, where they didn't have that before. Bobby says, thank you all for confronting those who are supposed to be a representative of our culture, who have lost their way and need to be slapped back into reality. And that is exactly, Bobby Henry, what we should do. That's exactly what we should. And it's nice to know that the chair of the NMPA supports that because that's what is needed at times. Y come on, how many of us went through our childhood and not get spanked, not get the belt or worse? And when how many of us, when we look back on it, understood better understood why? And when we look back on it, understood that that helped shape me and made me take this path. We cannot allow this type of stuff to go on in our community and not check it. They say it takes a village. Well, we are part of that village. And if that wayward child, whether he's 8 years old or in Stephen A. Smith's case, 55 years old, you got to use the rod of discipline. And Stephen A. Smith is long overdue. It's long overdue. And that goes for others like Stephen A. Smith. Jason Whitlock is a lost cause. Jason Whitlock don't even get that he wouldn't even be the house Negro. He would immediately be out in the fields. Stephen A. Smith thinks that his intellect will keep him in the house. I think he is miscalculating. Trump again went on another rant, just to prove the point. He went on another rant yesterday. We talked about how he in his Time magazine piece he says he wants to straighten out the fact that this country has become anti-white. We all know what that means. But he went on another rant yesterday, again letting everyone know how he feel about non-white folks. So these guys position themselves to be a part of Trump's bandwagon. Hmm. They all should be played a clip of this gay guy, um, a gay gentleman who was black guy too, avowed, as in his words, avowed MAGA until he went to a MAGA rally and was told he was not welcome because he was gay. It's a lot of people who, for some reason, those idiots carrying blacks for Trump signs and the N word for Trump signs, they'll learn. They will learn. And just like parents, you don't want your children to learn the hard way, but like the family structure, some of them have to learn the hard way. And that's the moral of that story. Did Hakeem Jeffries become the Speaker of the House this month? Um, with New York State Senator Tim Kennedy winning a vacant House seat, the GOP control in Congress is now down to just one seat. One seat. Now, granted, in a couple of months, there will be special elections for the 5 vacant seats that are currently in the U.S. House. But that's not until I think the earliest is June, mid-June. And so why do we say that Jeffries, or ask the question that could Jeffries become Speaker of the House this month? Well, none other than MAGA Marjorie Taylor Greene has triggered that clause that Kevin McCarthy first agreed to become Speaker that allows one member to call for a vote to oust the Speaker. That triggers a vote. Um, she set up a vote that will take place next week, unless she somehow. I think they got to go forward with it now, and she's doubled down anyway. She says she wants the votes to come in. But the point is this: Hakeem Jeffries has come out and said that the Democrats will wholeheartedly support Speaker Johnson, Mike Johnson, in any attempt to um, remove him. And say, okay, they're going to support him, meaning this. But keep in mind, there's a one vote now difference, one seat difference. It means this. You remember all those votes that they took for McCarthy, the 15 rounds, and every single Democrat voted for Hakeem Jeffries. And the House, the Republicans, of course, couldn't get themselves together. And then it happened again with Johnson. And so if they vote next week, it just means they're not saying they're going to vote for Johnson, but they see an opening where, as Lauren Boebert said, that we might as well allow Jeffries to be speaker. So if they see an opening in which one Republican decides to go totally off the rails and vote for Jeffries, th- every single Democrat will then cast their vote for Hakeem Jeffries, giving him, pushing him over the threshold. See, they didn't have enough the last two times. It wasn't, they had a 5 or 6 seat margin, the Republicans did. So the Democrats would not have enough votes to push Hakeem over the threshold. But with the MAGA wing fighting and infighting, now they're fighting amongst themselves and with the rest of the caucus, you could find a situation, you could see a situation unfolding where Hakeem Jeffries could indeed be pushed over the top by one rogue or one I'm sick and tired of this Republican. And then you'll have a situation, at least for a couple of months, where the Democrats once again will control the House, the Senate, and the White House. And folks, that would be so pivotal in the reelection campaign of Joe Biden. Why I say that? Because then he would then, at least for a short window, have an opportunity to pass things that they claim they want to pass. It would put them to the test. It would put every single Democrat to the test. We mentioned earlier the George Floyd Justice and Police Act. Everything should be on the table. DC home rule, DC statehood, I should say. Everything should be on the table. And it should be done with the quickness. Power 96 says, if the Democrats save MAGA Billy Mike next week, I need answers. Mike is an election denier. He doesn't care about the border deal or any other BS promises. No, I think the strategy, again, is to say that they're simply not going to let the House go into chaos these last few months. So if he has enough Republican support, Mike Johnson, the Democrats are basically saying they're not going to stand in his way. And speaking to Hakeem Jeffries a couple of months ago in his office, me and 7 or 8 other Black reporters, um, he said that Kevin McCarthy signed his own death warrant, if you will, um, with the lies he told and the fact that he came out and said simply, you know what, I don't want Democrat support. And Hakeem said, I knew he was done. He said, I knew he was done at that point. Um, Power 96 says that Joe Manchin would destroy anything in the Senate if Hakeem becomes a speaker. Yeah, it's true. He has already done that. But again, I contest that. Make the check big enough. Make the check big enough. This is what they do. You can't tell me it's not what they do. The other side, that is. Just make the check big enough. The man's already said he's not running again. So make the check big enough. The U.S. Commission on the Social Status of Black Men and Boys announced the release of its 2023 annual report, as well as the launch of its new website, CSSBMB.gov. The mission of CSSBMB, which was established in 2020, is to elevate Black men and boys by examining social disparities, issuing policy recommendations, and crafting legislation to Congress, the White House, and federal agencies for actionable implementation. The latest report highlighted 5 key areas that affect the lives of Black men and boys: education, housing, health, labor, and employment, and justice and civil rights. And on that note, throughout 2023, the commission held a series of meetings and events that delved into these topics. And they found, of course, no surprise, disparities in juvenile justice where Black youth were processed in the system at least twice that of all others. Black children were much more likely to be referred to the juvenile justice system than white children when the circumstances were similar. Again, Denise Rolock Barnes, where are you this morning? Because that is exactly my issue with Mayor Muriel Bowser. The study found that the disproportionate representation of Black men and youth involved in the criminal justice system leads to disparate impacts of collateral consequences that continually punish Black males long after they have served their incarceration time. And of course, the latest data from the Bureau of Justice Statistics show that Black people were 5 times as likely as white people to be incarcerated. And remember, Black people make up 13.5% of the US population. Whites make up almost 59%. And we already talked about the wage gap. In addition to the higher rate of unemployment, Black men are negatively impacted from lower median wages than the general population. The Census Bureau released a report last year discussing that in 2022, the median weekly earnings for Black males were $991. And this was a 16.7% below median earnings for the total population. The median annual earnings for Black males was $22,499. 23% below the median earnings for the total male population. Black men have so many obstacles. 17.1% of Black males are considered to earn below the poverty level. The poverty rate among Black Americans was at a record low and had reached pre-pandemic numbers, is what they found. The Census Bureau, actually, who contributed to this report, found. Poverty rates in 2022 were also at historic lows for Black children under 18 at 22.3%. Yet still, Black individuals made up only 13.5% of the population. But 20% of the U.S. population lived in poverty. So they concluded that the ongoing disparities in the state and federal criminal justice system and police stops, arrest, use of force, incarceration, reentry, and collateral consequences of incarceration especially affect Black fathers and their families. And in the juvenile justice system, disparately targets Black boys. And it all points, they said, to the need for systemic criminal justice reform. They said the First Step Act and the Second Chance Act, they're promising. There needs to be ongoing monitoring of data, and adjustments are needed to improve results and close the racial disparities. Um, there is so much to that. So much to that. Frederica Wilson, yes, in fact, I have, um, sent out a note to Frederica Wilson about this. This was, yeah, we would love to dissect this. Mike, yes, absolutely. And finally, this morning, after releasing a women's wear collection for Divine Nine sororities in 2022, Macy's is unveiling a menswear collection similarly inspired by Divine Nine fraternities. They're honoring the MPHC organizations like Alpha Phi Alpha, Kappa Alpha Psi, Omega Psi Phi, Phi Beta Sigma, you know them all, Phi Beta fraternity. Well, the collection includes apparel showcasing each fraternity's unique colors, from purple and gold polos to black and gold cardigans. The collection's assortment of sport coats, hats, blazers, dress shirts, and accessories were reportedly designed to give members a variety of options to wear at both Greek and non-Greek affiliated events. Macy's is this stuff was designed by a black designer, by the way, Monty Holland. So, it's pretty cool that they have a specific design for the Divine Nine. um, Good for Macy's, but great for this designer. Congratulations to Monty Holland, the designer who put all this together. To create, as they say, a brighter future with bold representations for all. That is pretty cool. I love the colors. They pop. Look at that. Nice. Very nice. Power nice. Here we go with the fraternity. With the he goes Alpha. You mean Alpha because the rest are Boy Scouts groups. You see, and Bobby's watching. You know, Bobby's a proud what is he? I know he's one of those fraternities that he talks about. I think he's is he Omega? You guys are too much with your fraternities. But good job by Macy's, good job by Mr. Holland there, and I'm sure that the Divine Nine will really enjoy outfitting themselves with uh, this these great designs. Thanks again for watching. Continue to encourage others to subscribe to our YouTube page. Let them know that the cost of that is everyone's favorite cost. Free. It's free to hit the subscribe button and share your thoughts. And we'll be back with the Friday edition of Let It Be Known. Thanks for watching.